Welcome to Off the Shelf. I'm your host, Yvonne Wolf. Today, our special guest is author and illustrator Joanie Becker Goldberg with her first book, Goldie A, Poligee the Three Bears. Welcome, Joanie.
Thanks, Yvonne. Thanks so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, so I would love to hear about this picture book. You know, we haven't had a children's book writer for a while, so it's great to have someone who's speaking to our younger audience.
Thank you.
And so, Joanie, who motivated you to write this book?
Well, that would be my daughter, Hannah. The idea for Goldie A, Poligee and the Three Bears came while I was telling Hannah, she was 4 at the time, the story of Goldilocks. Mm-hmm. Hannah loved to read books at night, and like every other child, inevitably wanted one more. Mm-hmm. To get her to fall asleep, I would shut off the light and tell her one more. So one night, I was telling the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and as I was nearing the part where Goldilocks flees from the house never to be seen again, it occurred to me that Goldilocks really wasn't the greatest role model. Mm-hmm. So I switched it up. I made Goldie the hero. Mm-hmm. As I was creating this new version in my head, I realized somehow Goldie would have to have an epiphany that she was in the wrong in order to teach Hannah what was right. So the story became an adaptation with an unexpected moral twist. What is the right thing to do? Mm-hmm. Should she continue to flee or go back and face her fears, namely the bears? Anyway, I thought it was a cute story, and that was it until I was driving her to daycare one morning. And then I thought, this could be a book.
Oh, yes.
We were in the car, and Hannah said, "Mommy, tell me Goldie." And I said, we didn't have time. Mm-hmm. But Mommy, it's my favorite story in the whole world. Aww. I promised I'd tell it that night. Mm-hmm. Then I dropped her off at daycare, ran to my car, dug in the console for scraps of paper, whipped out a pen, and without stopping once, transferred the entire story from my imagination onto paper.
How wonderful. Wow, what a story. How was a story?
Yes, yeah. And I cried because my story was her favorite story in the whole world.
Boy, you're going to give me to cry. Oh. All right, yes. I think we have so many wonderful stories that we share with our children, and I think Goldilocks is one of those that really end with not an ending. It begs to be a sequel, perhaps.
Right.
Oh,
well,
goodness.
I thought so, yes.
So how did you come up with the title of the book?
Well, Goldie A, Poligee and the Three Bears, granted, is an unusual title. And people don't usually get it when they first see it. But my thinking behind the title was I didn't want people to identify Goldie with just her hair, like Goldilocks, but rather somehow by her message. So I played around with the message, and apology, Poligee popped into my head, and it just became her name. Oh. So I changed the spelling to make it read phonetically and to be less obvious, which evidently it is, but I will say when it does click, the reader has an aha moment and then it sticks. And so, yes, it's unusual. But when a little girl says, Goldie, apology, get it, Mom? Get it? Yes. Then I know I chose the right title.
Oh, it is a wonderful age when they realize there are double meanings. It's just it's just beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think there's so many of these fairy tales that we tell our children that part of the creativity is to come up with a new ending. I think that you were onto something that Shrek and all these shows have created.
Exactly, yes. Right.
But in the incubation of this period was quite long, right? Because your daughter is not a child anymore.
Yes. Well, my daughter was 22 at the time of publication. Mm-hmm. So that means it was incubating for 18 years. And of course, I wasn't writing that whole time, but I was mostly being mom to our 2 kids and focusing on the family. But once I had the original manuscript, the idea of making Goldie a book was always in the back of my mind. And I worked on that book for months and years intermittently, and it became a pattern. I'd add illustrations, delete extraneous parts, add watercolors, show her to family and friends, and I'd delete some more and add something back, and yet still something was missing. And so one day I was reading the book with Hannah again, and I got to the end of the book and read Goldie 1. Hannah laughed, and she didn't even apologize. That was it. The just right ending to the story that I'd been waiting for. So the ending was what was missing, and then when Hannah supplied it, that was it. And it still amazes me. But now it was time, and the reason was actually my 60th birthday. I turned 60 in December, and last August I decided my deadline was my 60th birthday. I would hold a printed copy of Goldie in my hands by the time I turned 60. So on November 16th, I'll never forget it, my husband Mike came running in. "Joanie, she's here." I said, "What? Who's here?" "Goldie, come on." Oh my gosh, I ran outside. There in the driveway was a UPS truck, and two guys were unloading 8 huge boxes of books with 500 books to be exact. And my 18 years in the making dream come true had arrived, and I'll never forget it. And
Wow.
I've cried.
Yes, and that's the most beautiful gift you can give to yourself and to your family. That's like a third baby, I would think.
Yeah, exactly. In that much time.
Yes.
Right.
And so how is it to be an illustrator and the author? Like you said, you deleted some pictures, and you can't complain to the illustrator.
No, it was all on me. But I did not think I was going to be the illustrator. So it started, as I said, as a bedtime story. And then when I had gone through all my scraps from my writing frenzy, I had the written story. So the writing definitely came first. But then, unbeknownst to me, the illustrations, which, like I said, I had absolutely no idea I was going to be doing, they came immediately after. Hannah's daycare teachers heard I'd written a children's book, and they said they'd love for me to read it to the class. So
her daycare teachers are still in touch with you,
yes,
I suppose, after 18 years.
And so
oh my goodness.
it was kind of overwhelming, this idea of keeping 4-year-olds' attention for this amount of time. So I knew I needed visuals. So Goldie came to life, and I stayed up the entire weekend drawing charcoal sketches of Goldie and the Three Bears to create a makeshift book that I could read to the class.
You were an illustrator before? I mean, you have some artistic...
I've taken a class or two in college, but no professional experience whatsoever.
Incredible.
But I did have a vision of Goldie, and I saw her as a cute, sweet, likable little girl, and I was doodling in squiggly lines in all directions, and there was her hair. And as for the bears, I wanted approachable, friendly family bears. It was important the pictures appeal to a young audience.
Definitely.
So my aim was understandable, relatable art, and I chose watercolor for the same reason, because it's lighter and almost whimsical. But I bet you're wondering why I ended up, or how I ended up actually being the illustrator.
Yes. Not anyone is there to do one thing, to write, and then to illustrate as well.
Right, and
without the background.
I was not prepared, and yet I was extremely hesitant, because that very reason, I'm not a professional artist, but I have a lot of friends who are, and they convinced me that Goldie needed to be my Goldie, as I had envisioned her and brought her to life.
Which is a rare, unique trait with when we have interviewed authors who work with illustrators. They keep trying to to give them idea what they have in mind.
Right.
And it's never sure how you
right.
are
You don't know
paired
that
up,
you're gonna get exactly what you're thinking, and I was so fortunate because I did, and I couldn't be happier or more proud of the way the book turned out, really. So I'm glad they convinced me.
And that sounds like a very huge growth for you as well, and personally.
Right.
Now we did touch a little bit about your intended audience. It looks like the preschool 4-year-old. But have you had received a surprise audience, like you didn't think would be interested in your book?
Well, the audience is actually 5 to 9, with 5 to 7 being the sweet spot.
I see.
So books generally are geared for a certain age and reading level, but some are intended to be read. And my original was an oral adaptation, so I intentionally kept the narrative aspect of the book to encourage an interactive experience between parent and child, parents reading to their children.
So these vocabulary, did you have to revise them for children to
Well,
learn to read themselves? Or?
That's an interesting question, because some of the vocabulary could be considered a little challenging. Words like scaled, for example, maybe the child's never heard the word, but context clues and an illustration of Goldie climbing up the mattresses are there to help with interpretation.
Wow.
So as far as universality, that I found that both boys and girls respond to Goldie equally.
Oh, that's nice.
Except girls love Goldie because she's cute and she's brave.
Yes.
And it's my hope that little girls will identify with her good qualities.
Well, it definitely takes a lot of time to pick over the words, the word choice for you to, for your purposes. So that's, now so this book is meant for reading out loud.
Yes.
And you have tested that as well?
Yes, and in fact, I have a niece who has 4 children, and she reads it to them, and they're at 6 to 1, and she gets varying response, obviously, but the 6-year-old just loves it.
Well, that's the best kind of test group, that you have family, and you have keep testing. So, Joanie, where have you read Goldie A, Poligee and the Three Bears to a live audience?
Well, so far since it came out in December, I've had the pleasure of reading to grades pre-K through 3rd at schools in Northbrook and Deerfield. The librarian at Hanking School is looking to schedule me in the fall, and I will happily read to as many schools as will have me, because sharing Goldie with little ones has been the biggest joy, and reading to them has been the most meaningful highlight of becoming an author. And I've also, it was interesting, I read to my old book group. They invited me to come do a special reading at their meeting, and having a room of well-read, well-educated women, many of them educators themselves, actually applaud at the end of my story was simply surreal.
Yes, another moving moment of this presentation.
And I was thrilled to find out that a high school English teacher I know is teaching Goldie to his classes and giving them creative writing assignments. They have to pick a fairy tale and adapt it. And I think it's unbelievably cool that my book inspired that.
Oh, yes, a creative writing topic on its own.
And he said I could come speak to the classes in October, so I'll get to talk to the high school classes.
And this is local high school?
This is actually in Wisconsin.
Oh, Wisconsin. Oh, my goodness. So you require some
traveling.
I'm going to travel. You're booking in. You and Goldie are going places.
Yes, thank you. I hope so.
And I hope that will take you on a bigger journey across the country.
Thank you. From your mouth to the universe, that would be great.
Now, when you were working on this book, what difficulty did you not anticipate? Now, we talked about the arts history, and I think that is already something you weren't maybe even perhaps ready to tackle. But then what else Perhaps.
You know, something completely out of our control. The one wall that we repeatedly ran into was a prohibitive cost of publishing, printing, and distribution.
I see.
The biggest challenge was the 4-color bleed processing and the length of the book, because it's a 48-page book, and most children's books are 32.
Right. That I learned from our guests. 32 is a magic number.
Right, and yet we felt that it had a deep enough message that it warranted the extra length. But the bottom line was the price was exceeding what we could realistically charge for the retail price. So we found that the only way we could generate a profit was to sell exclusively on our own website.
I see.
So we had to bypass the distributor and third parties like Amazon.
Wow, that's really interesting to come to that solution.
Yeah.
And what do your readers say about your book?
Oh, gosh,
Being longer, they probably, for children, it takes a little more for them to, they feel it that it's longer, right?
They do feel it's longer. It holds the attention of the older child, definitely. And I will say that, like I said, I've been so pleased with the way Goldie's been received. And the first reaction I almost always get is, you did your own illustrations, and then that's followed by, your illustrations are charming. So it's so sweet because I don't see myself as an artist. But kids love the book, and parents tend to get a kick out of the idea of Goldie breaking and entering. They think it's funny, and it's a great message, and it opens up communication, and they're just happy that they're talking about what is the right thing to do and why it's important to take responsibility for your actions.
Oh, yes. This is, I think you should be handing these copies to children or cops. But now, when we talk about social media or your website, do you host it yourself? What do you do on the social media front? Have you learned that skill as well?
I am not great at social media. I would say I'm definitely not the go-to, but I have a niece who is a social media guru, and she's taken the lead on just about everything. And she created the website and so many other aspects. And she's one of a few key people I couldn't have done the project without. And another is a close family friend who's a professional graphic designer, and he perfected the physical design of the book and designed the logo. And I have another dear friend who's a professional editor who tirelessly edited and gave creative feedback. And then my husband, I just have to shout out, he was in it from the beginning and always believed Goldie would be a book. And I simply couldn't have done it without him and his unwavering belief in me and Goldie.
That's like a whole team.
I'm so grateful to all of them. It was a whole team.
And that definitely speaks to how professional the book production is.
Thank you.
I can see the page layout and the cover, so forth, speaks from a professional look.
Thank you.
Yeah. And being your first book, right?
Yes.
So, but now I can see where 18 years went.
Exactly.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Glenview. Now, you went to the Glenview Library meet and greet of local authors. I'm so glad that you did, because I was able to find you, and your website was easy to find as well.
Oh, good.
So can you tell us a little bit what connects you to Glenview?
Absolutely. We love Glenview. We've lived here for 30 years, and it's just a perfect fit for us. I honestly can't imagine living anywhere else. And of course, we originally were drawn by the schools, but then along came baseball. And our son Derek played on the Glenview Patriots travel baseball team. And it was so much fun, and we played all over the North Shore. And his last year ended in a championship. And so we just had a great time, and that was 20 years ago. And now he's 32, and I still get nostalgic when I drive by those fields.
Oh, yes. Yes, and when you mentioned a preschool, it must be a Glenview preschool, right?
Yes, Wesley.
Oh, Wesley, yes. Yeah, we went to a Methodist, and all these, we kept in touch with our preschool teacher for several years. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you feel that the Glenview community really speak to you?
It's a wonderful community. I just can't say enough about Glenview, really.
Well, tell us a little bit about what advice you may have for our audience out there.
For children's books, I would say read children's literature and immerse yourself in children's books. Go to the library, go to a bookstore, and just get lost in the children's department.
Oh, I do. Yeah, I think I still do. I love the variety of books.
They're endless.
Yes,
They're endless. And some of my old favorites are like Make Way for Ducklings and The Story About Ping, Caps for Sale, Goodnight Moon.
Oh, those songs have cadence and build a lot of...
They're great starting points. So if you're looking to start, that's a good point. And there are literally thousands of children's books published each year. So ask yourself, if you're starting out, why couldn't mine be one of them? And then write. And allow yourself to follow the strands wherever they may lead, because you never know what may lead to what.
Wow. That's very encouraging, because that is a huge market. I have definitely, every time I go to Glenview Library, I see something new, right? Something
It's
that
true.
my
They're
children
coming out
could
all
have,
the time.
read in that time. And what kind of advice do you have for any writer out there?
Wow. Well, I guess I'd say if you've always wanted to write, start writing. And one thing I do is keep a journal. And it can be a spiral notebook or a beautifully bound handmade journal. But what matters is your words. They're your words, and they deserve to be written. So get your journal, trust yourself, and write. And it can be about anything, what you did that day, what you had for breakfast, whatever pops into your mind. And what you did for breakfast just may lead to the time when you were a kid at dinner and you shook the salad dressing and the lid wasn't on tight and salad dressing went everywhere and you got in so much trouble. And there is the seed for your story.
Wow. Well, thank you, Joanie, for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure to be here.
And thank you for watching. Join us next time on Off the Shelf.